This week brings more items being banned from the biggest lines, and a fire breaks out at the busiest port in the world. Ahoy travelers, it's Amy here with your weekly Cruise News Roundup and my thoughts on some of the biggest stories of the week. We are back from our MSC cruise around Norway. You're going to want to stick around until the end for a little bit of information of what's happened since we've been back home. But first, let's get into some of the biggest stories from the past week. Well, fire broke out at the Port of Miami Friday around 5:45 p.m. local time. And this happened unexpectedly. Cell phone video shows black smoke rolling out of a front-end loader that's used to move shipping containers, with the fire eventually fully engulfing that loader. Now, many of the videos you can see online were taken by passengers on Royal Caribbean's Allure of the Seas as the ship was leaving the port. Just floated right past this fire. Now, these clips show heavy black smoke and the loader fully engulfed in flames. Thankfully, first responders got there quickly and were able to control the fire before it spread to the containers and buildings nearby. No cruise operations were affected, and that includes MSC's Magnifica and Carnival Conquest, which were also in the port at the time. Most importantly, though, no one was hurt. One thing to note is how close the fire got to MSC Cruises' new terminal. MSC has been building what will be the largest cruise terminal in North America. It's set to open by the end of this year. They've invested about $350 million into this project, and construction has been underway since 2022. Now, fire damage at this stage would have been a huge setback, but luckily, that was not the case. As the busiest cruise port in the world, this incident could have been much worse. There are 22 cruise lines operating out of the Port of Miami with 55 ships, and the port saw over 7 million cruise guests in 2023. This week also brought about some new prohibited items for cruisers. First off is one that will affect many cruisers, or at least I figure it will. Royal Caribbean has decided to ban any extension cords and multi-plug outlets / power strips. Now, while extension cords have been banned from many lines, and those with surge protectors especially have been banned for years, the addition of banning multi-plug outlets will affect many cruisers. Now, I know that I always take a multi-plug. I will show you what it looks like. This is what I take. It has a longer cord on it so I can get it to where I need it. And it has several outlets along with 2 USB and a USB-C. So this cord allows me to get it where I need it, because you can't always get the plugins where you need them to be. While I don't cruise on Royal Caribbean, or at least haven't yet, and I don't have any cruises booked on a Royal ship, I find this to be a little bit restrictive. While newer ships have USB ports next to the bed and usually by the desk in the cabins, I've yet to come across any USB-C charging ports, at least not next to the beds. Older ships may only have them if they've been upgraded during a dry dock. Now, this new rule can really affect some cruisers' ability to charge their devices. Most lines will not let you leave things plugged in while you're not in the cabin, which means that you are limited to when you can charge your devices. So having extra ports is often necessary for cruisers. Now, Royal's saying that these are a fire hazard, as too many devices being hooked into a cabin's electricity can cause issues. Now, that might be true, but I have yet to hear any stories coming out of cabin fires or even blown fuses due to multi-plug outlets or too many things being plugged in at once. But that's not the only thing that was banned. Carnival had to come out and ban a new item after one cruiser attempted to get around purchasing onboard Wi-Fi with a relatively new device. So Starlink recently came out with a new portable version of their satellite internet called Starlink Mini. And one cruiser decided to bring it on board their cruise in order to get high-speed internet at sea without paying Carnival. Now, apparently Carnival's banned items list had satellite discs listed, but now has been changed to say satellite dishes, which makes the Starlink Mini a no-go. And while I think that attempting to use the Mini was pretty ingenious, can you imagine what it would look like if even 10% of cruisers were carrying them around the ship? Starlink Mini isn't cheap, as it's a $600 cost for the device, and then there's a monthly charge. Now, my Starlink is $110 a month, but apparently it's $250 a month to use that Mini over the ocean. So while having your own internet would provide you with higher speeds than onboard Wi-Fi, you would definitely have to sail more than one 7-day cruise a month to make that $250 charge worth it, as Carnival's premium plan starts at $21-25 per person per day. So you'd have to have over 10 days at sea for it to be worth it. Most lines, including Carnival, now have Starlink on board their ships. I'm not sure what Elon is charging them per day, but I have a feeling cruise lines are making a lot of money on cruisers purchasing Wi-Fi. With many either needing Wi-Fi for business or choosing to remain connected during their cruise, more and more cruisers are choosing to purchase those Wi-Fi packages. And while Wi-Fi costs continue to rise on board cruises, I feel like costs should be going down. Unless lines are being charged by Starlink based on the number of users, not the number of dishes on board their ship, which I find unlikely, then I just find it hard to believe that these lines couldn't lower the cost of their Wi-Fi once the initial equipment was paid for. But what do you think? Do you purchase onboard Wi-Fi? Do you think the costs are reasonable, or do you think the lines are making some good money off of it? Comment below. Some big news coming from the cruise shipbuilding world. The German government has stepped in to save Meyer Werft. It's a historical shipyard known for building major cruise ships for lines like Disney, Royal Caribbean, Norwegian Cruise Line. The government, along with the state of Lower Saxony, now owns about 80% of Meyer Werft after investing 400 million euros and providing 1 billion euros in financial guarantees. Now, this move has given the shipyard the stability it needs to keep operations going. Typically, only about 20% of a ship's construction cost is paid upfront, with the remaining 80% due when the ship is delivered, and it takes a couple years to build these ships, so these shipyards are relying on loans to cover the building process. These new guarantees from the government will allow Meyer Werft to continue building the cruise ships that we're all enjoying while securing its future. Now, while I'm not a fan of government bailouts, I am glad that Meyer Werft won't be going bankrupt anytime soon. I do wonder if there will be any changes now that the government owns 80% of it, because that means that they make the decisions because they have a majority share in this company. Well, if you're enjoying this video and maybe even learned something, consider subscribing with the notification bell on so you don't miss out on any future posts. I finally returned to work last week after being out for around 7 weeks as I had surgery, and then that led right into our vacation. Getting used to working nights again after all that time off has been a little bit of an adjustment this week. I really need to be working on all the videos I have planned for our trip, but I still haven't finished organizing and labeling all of my pictures and videos. So we'll see. Hopefully we'll get that out. We'll get them out on time. Part of that also is because I spend too much time reading. Yes, I just cannot stop reading my books. I think I read 4 or 5 books during our trip. And of course, I'm in the middle of a giant series, so I want to continue that and get to the end of that series. Last year, I really picked up on reading again, like prolifically reading again. Although I've always been a reader. I have a degree in English. I taught high school English for 10 years, but it's only recently that I got back into reading. So I think that's partly because after teaching English for 10 years, I needed a little bit of a break from literature. So, for example, according to my Goodreads, I read 4 books in 2023, and those were the ones I read at the end of the year. But I have now read 86 books so far this year, and I don't read short books either. And I may finally reach my 100 books in a year goal. I used to attempt that back when I was teaching, but I would get to around 90 just as November hit. And that was when my classes were writing their research papers, so I always ended up not having time to get those last 10 books finished. I just had to read too many research papers and deal with that. So I had to really tell myself to put my book down because I was getting close to the end of it so I could actually do this video today. But as soon as it's done, we're going to get that book finished. Anyway, we had a great time on our trip. I put a video out this week that gave an overview of our trip. I say trip instead of cruise since we spent time in Germany prior to leaving out on our cruise. If you haven't seen it, you definitely want to go back and watch that video. I'm also planning to put out a video next week, this coming Wednesday, on the good and bad of MSC and the Euribia. But for those interested in the food, you're going to need to wait because I want to dedicate an entire video to what we ate on our cruise and whether or not I liked MSA's food, as that has been a controversial topic amongst cruisers in the past. So as much as we had a great time, I'm glad to be back home. We were gone for 13 days, which is much longer than usual. It has been nice to sleep in my own bed and get back to my usual routine. I do want to tell one story of what happened while we were gone. As many may know, I have chickens and ducks and I have a couple guineas, and so somebody has to take care of all that. Mostly my dad, my sister-in-law, and my niece help out as well. So I had several broody hens sitting on eggs prior to leaving for our trip. And right before we left, I candled the eggs, got rid of any that didn't have chicks in them, and I split the eggs up between these 3 hens. I told my dad there might be chicks and where to find the chick feed, but that the hens should take care of them and he wouldn't really need to do anything. However, I've never had more than 1 hen hatch eggs at the same time, so I didn't foresee the problem that was about to occur. Apparently, when the eggs hatched, the hens all started fighting over the chicks. There ended up being 7 chicks, and we had 3 hens, and most were very small chicks since they came from one of the hens that's Bantam hen, so it's really tiny. And so these little chicks were really small. Dad said that one hen would get the chicks all gathered up underneath her, and then the Bantam hen would just crawl underneath her to steal the chicks. Plus, since so many of them were extra small, I think 4 of them were from the Bantam eggs, and so they were like half the size of the other chicks. He was worried about them. So Dad and my nephew ended up catching all the chicks, and he took the largest hen, because he said she could cover the most chicks, and put them in the brooder coop at his house. And they've got a large place that they keep, if they have little chicks, they've got a large run for them. So they had plenty of space, but they couldn't get lost out in the grass, he said. Now I could just picture them trying to get all those chicks gathered up with 3 angry hens chasing them around. Wish there'd been video of that. Well, after I got home, I went and I got the hen and chicks and brought them back to my house where she now has them out in the yard. It's so adorable. But since it has been a couple of weeks, the other hens aren't really trying to take the chicks anymore, and everything seems fine. The funny thing is that the hen my dad chose to be the mom ended up being the one that had only been broody for about a week before I left. So the 2 that had done all the work of sitting on the eggs in the heat, only getting down to take a drink and get something to eat once a day, they didn't get their chicks. Life on the farm. Well, are you ready for more information on cruising? Why not stick around and check out this video and then come back for more information designed to help you have an amazing cruise. Have a blessed week, everyone.